morning, good evening, good time of day to everybody. It's going to be a pretty simple presentation today. Just wanted to give sort of an overview of the kind of work I'm involved in at HeadSpin. I know I've already been working with a bunch of folks from a bunch of different departments, I guess, and gotten to know a lot of you already, so that's great. But for those of you who haven't had a chance to work with yet, it might be helpful to know some of the things that HeadSpin is involved in when it comes to training and when it comes to the open source Appium project and things like that. So yeah, this is me. Let's begin talking about HeadSpin University, which we usually abbreviate HSU. This is what it looks like if you go to our website and click on HeadSpin University in the top tab. The URL there is /university/home. And you can see just from this design here that we offer some video courses. When you actually go to watch some of these courses, there's a whole application that we've built that lives at ui.headspin.io in our web app that allows you to kind of walk through courses. So there's a whole sort of e-learning application that we've built. Say a few things about what HeadSpin University is. So first of all, we've got a collection of free content that you can take advantage of yourself, or you can share with customers or prospects or folks out there on social media. The free content is stuff like some webinars that we've done in the past, an introductory course to Appium. It takes people from no real experience with Appium to being able to find and interact with elements in a basic way. This course assumes that you know the Java programming language. And then some recordings of a thing I used to do that I haven't had time to do for a while, but it was really fun, called Automation Happy Hour, or sort of like a live streaming coding session, just kind of putting a brand new app in front of me that I've never tried to automate before, and trying to do that live. So that was pretty fun. We'll probably do some more of those in the future, but they're sort of interesting to watch. For those who are maybe trying to get into automation themselves and maybe feeling like it's a little bit difficult, you can watch me kind of struggle and thrash around trying to automate things as well. So it's entertaining. And we do have a set of paid courses. Well, what will be a set right now, we've got one that's live. The one that's live is called Appium and Selenium Fundamentals. And that's a course that I developed. It costs $250 if you just come in with a credit card and want to take it. Although we usually have separate arrangements with enterprise customers based on contract deals. And it's free for all of you that work at HeadSpin. And I believe it's been made an option as part of onboarding to go ahead and get enrolled in this course. And I know that I've been walking many of you through the different course challenges. So for those of you who haven't been through the course yet, let me share a little bit about what's involved. It is a video-based course that I designed, and it's got about 20 plus hours of high quality video. So it's definitely longer than your average online course. Excuse me, need some little coffee injections here as we go along. So it's when I say high quality, what I mean is just that I basically scripted out the entire thing, and it's not like this sort of presentation we're doing now where I'm just kind of talking off the cuff. It's very complete, and the video is edited to a high standard and things like that. So we've got lots of good feedback on that. It takes you from starting point of not necessarily even having any programming experience or automation experience before to take advantage of the course. So it basically teaches you programming. There's a module on Python It's probably not the best way to learn Python that's out there, but I wanted the course to be totally self-contained, so I felt like I had to kind of teach things from the ground up. And I've gotten pretty good feedback on just the Python fundamentals module in the course as well. So it seems like it's working for folks that either have no experience or maybe have just had a little bit of experience. And it teaches Selenium for web browser testing, Appium for iOS and Android testing in a bunch of different modes. So the Appium portion is one of the longest set of modules in the course. But it also goes on to teach some more high-level skills, where we're talking about, now that we know how to do basic automation mechanics, how do we turn that into a useful test suite? So we talk about refactoring and organizing a test suite and building it up from first principles, basically, which I've also gotten really good feedback on, because a lot of folks that work as automation engineers have learned automation to a high standard. They can write automation scripts pretty well, but they've just come into a test suite and they're just working with it how it is. And when they're kind of required to start a new project, they often don't know how to begin. And so they've really found this aspect of the course valuable as well. Another kind of unique thing about this course is that it's evaluated based on a series of hands-on challenges. So when I say hands-on challenges, what I mean is that at the end of every kind of practical module, you're required to actually write a test script and execute it on a HeadSpin device on the HeadSpin platform. And this lets me kind of make sure that you've actually learned what was intended to be taught in that particular module. So it's quite a bit more intensive than just answering a series of multiple choice questions. And some of the challenges can be pretty difficult. They are designed to take some time. And most people don't get them all successfully passed on the very first attempt, because I am looking for a pretty high standard there to solve those challenges. And one of the reasons for that standard and for it being evaluated at all is that when you complete all the challenges, you get a certification. So you become a HeadSpin University certified automation engineer through this course. And we wanted that certification to mean something. And that's another reason for these challenges. And again, despite the fact that they're a bit difficult and can be a bit frustrating at times, the overall feedback that we've gotten has been that students are really glad that these are there, and it's caused them to actually learn Selenium and Appium in a way that they hadn't by just taking other online courses that simply test your knowledge and don't give you any experience. And as I mentioned, as part of completing the challenges, you get access to HeadSpin devices. And that's really awesome for us as a company, because it means that folks are learning the HeadSpin platform at a very basic level, but learning the HeadSpin platform on their way to learning Appium. And it's the course is definitely not designed to market the HeadSpin product. It's designed primarily just to teach these open source tools and methodologies. But the students are getting familiar with HeadSpin devices, and definitely there's been at least a few that I've heard of that have gone on to inquire about their company buying HeadSpin as a result. And so that's the first course that we've had out, and we are about to release, hopefully, before the end of the quarter, our second kind of high quality video based course that will also be paid. It's going to be on the XCUI test technology from Apple. So what some people would call Apple native testing, because it's using the native mobile testing tools that Apple itself provides. And that's course is being designed by some friends and partners of HeadSpin. And I'm walking them through that, and that should be out pretty soon. Another thing that sometimes happens under the umbrella of HSU is to do kind of one-off consultations with enterprise customers. So something that we've started doing a fair bit is working some of the working one of the courses like the Appium Selenium Fundamentals course into a contract. And then when all the students that have purchased the course at the customer have gone through the course, then we kind of meet and talk about it. Or sometimes I'll just hop on a call with a customer to give a consultation on Appium or test suite design or things like that. I should also say that our paid courses, I didn't put this as a bullet, but the paid courses come with kind of exclusive access to our Slack channel. We actually, or our Slack group, I should say, we have a HSU Slack group where students can kind of help one another, and I hang out in there and help students with the course and answer all kinds of questions. And people have found that really valuable to be able to have that kind of one-on-one engagement with instructors as well as each other as they're going through the course. So just a few stats on the Appium course as it's been running for about a year, I guess. We've had 250 students sign up to take the course. I meant to get this data point from Tony, but and I don't even know if he got back to me overnight, but I just rolled out of bed and went to this presentation. So I don't know how many students have completed the certification. If you're interested, follow up with me later on that. There have been 942 challenges submitted and graded. So this is when somebody writes a test script and runs it on the HeadSpin platform on a HeadSpin device, and then uses the course interface to submit that to me, and then I go through and I grade it according to whether it meets the standards or meets the requirements of that particular challenge. Yeah, it's felt like I've graded about 1,000 of these things, and I have. And 730 of them were passing submissions, and 212 of them were failed submissions, which then, the person went back and redid and became passed. So that's kind of a lot. We've gotten all around excellent feedback from people that have taken the course. There's a bunch of quotes that I should have kept in one place because there have been some really awesome ones, but just as a couple examples, there have been a bunch of people who've said that they really appreciate how the course isn't just based around multiple choice questions, which allows people to easily cheat or just not test their practical skill. So they like the fact that we have hands-on challenges, and a lot of people have liked the fact that there's something for beginners as well as experts in the course, because it kind of is so comprehensive that it takes you from no experience to even things like test suite design and architecture. So I'll just finish up with kind of what we're looking to achieve in the next little bit with HeadSpin University, and then if you have any questions about HeadSpin University, we can pause before I move on to the next section. So despite the fact that I've been talking a lot about how our hands-on challenges are really valuable, we are actually looking at offering a version of the course and courses that are evaluated by multiple choice and don't require manual grading. And part of the reason for this is because there are some scaling challenges with the hands-on version of the course. I was looking to automate grading of the courses, but after grading 1,000 of them, I'm still keen to try some kind of machine learning approach, but I don't have great confidence that that using some kind of machine learning algorithm we could get a very high confidence result for grading these things. There's just a lot of I don't know how to call it. A lot of I think there's too many options for what counts as a successful result, and so I really have to evaluate all those. And then plus, I like to give targeted feedback, like, oh, when you used this particular selector, that wasn't acceptable, try this locator strategy instead. And maybe with 1 million responses, we could write some kind of automated system. Or maybe somebody who's just really good at this wants to take this on as a side project to see if we can train a model on this data. But anyway, we'd like to be able to scale it also at a lower cost. So we are looking at having a kind of hands-free version of the course where it includes all the educational content and kind of self-graded multiple choice, but doesn't lead to a certification and will be a lot cheaper, just to kind of open up the content to a much wider audience. And as I said, we're going to be getting this new course on XUI test. It's probably going to start out in the multiple choice mode, just because of limitations on part of the author that's developing it at the moment, but we might expand to the certification level as we go, these accounts. And we have no kind of admin interface at the moment for tracking user progress or things like that. So I'm doing everything on the command line and sometimes writing custom scripts. And there's a lot of stuff that I just don't have easy access to. As you saw on the previous slide, I didn't have a quick way to figure out how many certifications we've awarded. And we're going to be adding some more new free content under the umbrella of HSU. For example, some of the videos from this series that we have this morning will also be available there for free. And we're going to be looking at how to teach HeadSpin on HeadSpin University. So kind of not upgrading, but having a different modality for learning about HeadSpin, the product, than the docs themselves. Looking for somebody to kind of take the lead on developing a simple video course on HeadSpin itself that we can host on HeadSpin University. And we also are trying to hire for the team someone to focus on doing some more training along with me, someone to help with the grading for the Selenium and Appium course, someone to help with content creation, writing blogs and doing videos, and maybe doing more of these automation happy hour streams and things like that. So I haven't had too much luck finding someone for this role yet. So if you have any ideas, somebody that's really skilled with Selenium and Appium and is very personable and great talking to customers, things like that, great at writing and communicating, let me know. I'm pretty sure that there is a referral bonus in place at HeadSpin. So yeah, keep that in the back of your mind. And obviously, we're going to need to focus some more on business development, figure out how to scale HeadSpin University as a valuable part of HeadSpin's overall business, etc. So the other thing that I'm kind of in charge of at HeadSpin is Appium. So let's talk about what's going on there. So I assume that most of you have heard of Appium, even if you're not intimately familiar with it. But just as a kind of brief refresher, if you're new to the company or working in a department or team where you're not likely to have encountered Appium yet, Appium is basically a set of open source tools and APIs that allows automation of iOS and Android and many other platforms as well. So the brief history of Appium is that the kind of idea for Appium and a proof of concept was developed by these two folks, Dan and Jason, back in 2012. Dan was working at an online dating site and wanted a way to automate his iOS app, and nothing really existed. So he kind of found a hacky way to do that. And then Jason Huggins, who was the original creator of Selenium tool and was a CTO at Sauce Labs at the time, kind of took that idea and they worked on it to say, oh, this should be like a WebDriver based thing. So they kind of laid some of the conceptual groundwork. And since I was working at Sauce Labs at the time, I sort of became responsible for actually turning some of those ideas into reality. So I started writing Appium code, I guess over 9 years ago now, if I'm doing my math correctly. So it's been a kind of long-lived open source project, and it's created a lot of value in the industry and can become sort of the de facto standard for mobile automation, which has been fun. Appium as an interface is based around something called the WebDriver protocol, which was initially kind of pioneered by Selenium. Eventually, it was worked on at the W3C and ratified as a W3C standard, or what they call a recommendation, I guess, so that the browsers basically have to implement the WebDriver protocol. So every W3C compliant browser, like Chrome and Firefox and Safari and all the others, Edge, etc., have the ability to receive automation commands via this protocol when they're started in a special mode. So the WebDriver protocol is kind of just a very popular way to automate web browsers. And so when Appium was being developed, we thought, why don't we just kind of augment this standard and try and promote the standard in a broader way as something which doesn't need to just apply to web browsers, but can apply to apps of all different kinds. And so we've really tried to kind of, again, promote open source standards and methods. And I think that's been a really good thing for the industry. Unfortunately, there hasn't yet been the equivalent of any kind of standards body or cross-industry agreement from mobile operating system vendors that they should all implement the protocol themselves. So Apple and Google, in terms of iOS and Android, they know about Appium. They know tons of people use it, but at least so far in history, they haven't found it advantageous to try and create an open interface to their automation capabilities. And that's something I'm constantly trying to kind of work on in the background, is how can we convince some of these folks that it might be better to kind of collaborate around automation standards rather than have them be competitive things, competitive aspects of the business between the platforms. So as I already mentioned, Selenium is for web browsers, but Appium's vision is that it kind of extends the WebDriver protocol to everything. So you can use Appium actually to automate web browsers. You could use Appium to automate mobile devices. You can use it to automate TVs, all kinds of stuff. So the way that Appium kind of satisfies this vision is by thinking about support for a particular platform as being powered by a particular piece of software called an Appium driver. So you can write an Appium driver for a particular platform if you know how to do any kind of automation on that platform, and if you can hook that up somehow into a Node.js package, then you can make that an Appium driver that can be hooked into the main Appium server interface and allow automation for that platform. So the most popular drivers are obviously the ones for iOS and Android. The drivers are named after the technologies that they depend on. So the iOS driver is named after XCUI test, which is the automation technology from Apple that it primarily uses, although it goes way beyond what that technology on its own can do. And likewise for Android, the primary technology is called UI Automator 2. There's another Android driver based around the Espresso technology, but it's not as popular and in some ways has some more limitations. As I mentioned, drivers exist for a lot of other kinds of platforms as well. Appium itself as a piece of software, or a set of GitHub repositories, is technically owned by the OpenJS Foundation. It used to be I think it was just called the JS Foundation. And I transferred Appium's copyright from Sauce Labs to the JS Foundation a long time ago, because I made the argument that as a kind of neutral project being owned by a nonprofit rather than a single company in a competitive landscape, that it would invite more contribution and have a chance at a longer life. And so I think that that's really been borne out. It's been really good for Appium and the community, and I guess specifically for HeadSpin, where we all are now, right? So let's talk about Appium at HeadSpin. As far as I know, and I've been trying to get some specific data on this, but I think that for a long time in HeadSpin's life, we weren't necessarily tracking exactly how people were using devices in terms of whether they were started by an Appium session or in some other way. But as far as I know, Appium is one of, or maybe the most popular way for customers to use HeadSpin devices in terms of starting Appium sessions on a device for functional automation. And the kind of very basic, very standard way that customers kind of take advantage of both Appium and HeadSpin is that they use the Appium technology to kind of power the functional aspect of a test. So like take the test through its steps, like if you're testing login, find the username field and the password field and put the correct data in them and tap the login button and then make sure that the right thing happened. And then they're using a HeadSpin device to do this, so they get all the advantages of HeadSpin remote devices and location-based devices and things like that. But on top of that, just by running the test on HeadSpin, they get access to all the data and insights that HeadSpin automatically generates that we might call the non-functional aspects of a test, things like performance metrics, or the video mean opinion score stuff, or network latency, all of these dozens of metrics that HeadSpin collects and rolls up into insights and alerts and stuff like that. So that's just kind of a really nice marriage of technologies here. Customers get to use an open source technology that they already know to kind of write and run their tests, but then when they use HeadSpin, they just get all this stuff, not for free, but essentially for free in terms of them not having to do any extra work to get it. And that's a really cool story. Because HeadSpin, likes this way of things working, and it relies on Appium in this way, it's also heavily invested in developing Appium. So that's part of the reason that I'm at HeadSpin. HeadSpin employs two of the, I don't know, there's sometimes different numbers of core contributors. Right now there was maybe four to six core Appium contributors, and two of them work at HeadSpin, Kazu and myself. And there's also lots of other folks at HeadSpin who don't frequently contribute to Appium open source, but who work on aspects of Appium within the HeadSpin cloud itself, making sure that the experience of running an Appium test on HeadSpin is transparent and makes sense to users. So I'm not sure of all the folks that have touched Appium within HeadSpin, but I know that it's a lot. John and Kazu and folks that are no longer with the company, and all those who've kind of built out the Appium machinery to launch and proxy commands to Appium and stuff like that. Really, really difficult, important work. In terms of my team, what I'm calling the Appium team, we don't really have a team name, and also it's just me at the moment, so it's not really a team, but hopefully that will change. What do we do? Well, there's lots of stuff to do to make sure that an open source project doesn't die. I mean, it's very, very difficult to keep momentum for an open source project without a lot of contribution. So there's daily Appium maintenance, right? So Kazu and myself, and honestly, Kazu is just much better at this than I am, but every day we're reading GitHub issues from people saying that things don't work. I don't know how many we get a day. It's probably, in the high tens to something like a low hundred or something of email notifications to look at from GitHub and see, is this a bug? Walking people through troubleshooting, closing a lot of issues, dealing with disgruntled people and sometimes outright abuse from folks on GitHub. So this isn't what I would call the funnest part of the job, but it's super important. And then often in response to these issues, there'll be little things that we just need to code up a patch for, just to try and fix right away, or realize that, here's an improvement we can make. And then another big thing, and this is again something that Kazu does a lot more of, and I haven't been as deep into this in recent years, but we've got to keep up with platform updates, right? So there are new versions of iOS and Android. They're always coming out. iOS and Android don't support Appium officially, right? So they're quite happy to make changes to their tooling and their internal methods and things like that can break Appium's iOS and Android drivers. So there's just lots of testing and spelunking about in code, and especially in the case of iOS, doing code dumps and trying to read private headers and just experimenting with changing function call signatures to see if things get faster or slower. And it's quite tedious work just to kind of try and provide a consistent experience for people that are using Appium. And that's one of the advantages for people that use Appium is, at least theoretically, the Appium team is kind of doing the hard work of taking the hit for all these changes from the operating system vendors, so that you just have your Appium script you've written, and then the next version of iOS or Android comes out and the script keeps working and you didn't have to do anything. So that's a really huge benefit for users, but it means a lot of work for the Appium team, and it's with kind of uneven results sometimes as well. So sometimes, we're just fundamentally limited by bugs or performance issues in the underlying automation technology, and that provides a bad experience for Appium users, but it also provides a bad experience for, let's say, XUI test users. And it sometimes boggles my mind that Apple can release software that just works so poorly. So anyway, we get a lot of customer and user ire for those types of things, which often aren't our fault. So it's just kind of an interesting task to try and keep up with these updates. And then, of course, we try and work on features when we can, usually based on something that we just realize, we could do this, and so we do it, or sometimes based on a customer need at HeadSpin, or one of the contributors from Sauce Labs might have a customer need at Sauce Labs, and so they contribute a feature. There's very often not like a kind of product-oriented roadmap like you would find with a product team, because the contributors are people from different companies with different agendas, and so kind of beyond maintenance in terms of feature development, it's usually just kind of like, whatever we think is cool or useful. But then sometimes there's more of a roadmap, as it is the case right now for trying to get Appium 2 out the door. So that's one of the big things that we're working on at the moment, is getting Appium 2.0 kind of complete. It is basically complete in terms of its features, which I'll talk about in a second. There's a tool you've probably seen called Appium Inspector, which is a graphical interface for working with an Appium session, and it lets you just kind of do all the things you could do with an Appium client and code, but it lets you point and click and kind of see what's going on. And it's a great way to build up test scripts, figure out what locators are and things like that. So we maintain that. Then there's also new plugins and drivers that we're always working on. So trying to expand Appium support to different platforms, trying to increase the kind of capability surface of Appium through developing new plugins. For example, I just developed a plugin that adds support for optical character recognition, or OCR, to Appium that could be useful in certain situations. And so that's out there and available for folks using Appium 2. So things like that would be under the banner of feature development. And then, of course, there's a lot of work on the Appium and HeadSpin integration side. And that's mostly, again, what Kazu's responsibilities have been. And so right now, for example, Kazu is working on expanding HeadSpin's capabilities in terms of the types of Appium drivers that it supports. So for most of HeadSpin's history, it's supported Appium for iOS and Android, but we want to support Appium for Tizen TVs and Roku channels and things like that. And so we need a different architecture and a different way of making all that work. And so Kazu's been doing that a bunch. In terms of the kind of stuff that we're going to be hopefully doing sometime pretty soon, we'll hopefully be rolling out Appium 2.0 officially. The main things that are left are just kind of documentation and getting some help designing a better kind of user-facing homepage at appium.io. It hasn't been updated in probably 8 years. And so it's just inaccurate and kind of not following maybe with the current design patterns that people expect with technology sites. And we still need to make some updates to Appium Desktop so that it can launch an Appium 2 server and install drivers and plugins. But otherwise, Appium 2.0 is already kind of feature complete. We're encouraging folks to use it. We're not really supporting Appium 1 anymore. So this is the way forward. And then in terms of my team specifically, we're definitely looking at expanding Appium's abilities for HeadSpin specifically. We want to support new platforms at HeadSpin. And so part of my role with kind of R&D of Appium drivers is going to be exploring some new platform drivers. So we've got a Tizen driver for Samsung TVs, which is actually mostly complete. Just we're trying to roll it out to some more customers. And I'm sure as that happens that we'll find issues or find more work that needs to be done. Same is true for the Roku driver that we support. It's still very much in progress, I would say, because we haven't done enough testing with it, because we need more customers using it and kind of need access to their apps and their test scripts to be able to kind of see what it can do and what it can't do. But that's something that I'm working on with some folks on the various sales teams. There's a Unity plugin for automating games that's also in progress, and just needs to kind of have the tires kicked a lot more to see what kind of extra work needs to be done on it. We're looking at doing R&D for an LG OS driver for the LG TVs and more. So there's lots of other platforms that HeadSpin could support. Right now, kind of the OTT TV platforms and gaming stuff is what seems to be the priority. Definitely more things will be coming in the future. And then another big area of work for us is going to be Appium Inspector improvement. So you might have noticed that the Appium Inspector was recently integrated into the HeadSpin UI. So there's now a button by each of the devices, each of the Appium compatible devices in the remote control panel, where if you can just click on this button and it'll start an Appium Inspector session on that device for you, which is pretty awesome. But there's a lot of little bugs or little improvements that can be made, and some significant kind of user experience improvements that can be made to Appium Inspector. So we're going to be working on that. I'm actually trying to hire somebody specifically to focus on the inspector, just because there's so much to do and it's just such a valuable tool. And we think that the ceiling is pretty high in terms of where we can go with it. And now that it's integrated into HeadSpin's product, we want to just keep making it better for users. So, another thing that Brian and I have been talking about a bunch recently that we think will be helpful for us and for the community at large is to create a kind of benchmark suite for Appium that anybody can run on any environment to kind of check for themselves the functional and performance characteristics of an Appium server, including Appium cloud providers. So this could be a way for us to kind of help tune our cloud to make sure that we have great Appium benchmarks. And so we could invite customers to run this benchmark suite on their own from their own infrastructure to see how, for example, we compare to some of our competitors and hopefully, obviously, come out on top. And it gives us kind of a standard set of metrics to talk about in terms of Appium performance, and gives us targets to shoot for in terms of Appium performance as an Appium cloud provider that wants to be the best. So stay tuned for more news on that down the road.